Let's Talk Small Business, the real talk, no BS podcast for business owners and entrepreneurs who want to grow and actually enjoy the ride. I'm Mitchell Wilson. Let's get into it. Chip Higgins, the founder of Bizix, business coach, speaker, and an author of The Bizix Way. Now, he spent 35 years in commercial banking, working directly with small business owners, building high-performing teams, and helping businesses grow in real, practical ways. Now, what stands out about Chip is how he simplifies business. No fluff, no overcomplication, just clear thinking, strong leadership, and momentum that actually sticks. So, if you're trying to grow without getting buried in theory, this is going to be for you. Chip, let's talk small business.
I'm so excited to be with you, Mitchell. It's really an honor to be on your program. Thank you for having me.
And for those that are listening, whereabouts in the world are you sitting?
I'm just outside of Nashville, Tennessee, just south of Nashville and Franklin.
Okay. I don't know much about Nashville, Tennessee, but maybe, whiskey and music. Is that what comes out of your life?
You're pretty close.
Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, that's probably what it's most known for. But it's also the healthcare capital of the United States.
Right.
Hospital Corporation of America started here, I don't know, probably 50 years ago or more, and it's kind of it's just a center for thinking around healthcare delivery, even though our American systems are still pretty clunky.
Right.
There's a lot of industry around healthcare here, and in the southeastern United States, just a lot of automotive infrastructure. Bridgestone, North America's here. Mitsubishi North America's here. We have plants, and GM made a big move here many years ago. So it's a pretty diverse economy, but you can't ignore music and whiskey. I mean, it's
Okay.
That's what brings people here, not the automotive plants.
For that, I believe you've had like 35 years in banking. Let's hear a little bit of your journey from banking to where you are now, and maybe what it taught you about small business owners along the way, because you dealt with a lot of them during that time.
Yes. Yeah. I'm a little bit, I don't know how it is in New Zealand, but banking in the United States, most of the people you talk to they can't tell you how they got into banking. Just kind of.
I used to be in banking myself. Okay.
So I'm a bit of an odd duck that I grew up in a very strong kind of banking center in North Carolina. There was a bank there, founded there and was headquartered there for a really long time, called Wachovia, which bit the dust back during the mortgage crisis. They made some bad strategic decisions, but it was a dominant bank in the United States, and North Carolina was a particularly good banking state. And I really just kind of gravitated to the idea of working in banking. It's kind of like there's a certain amount of intellect in it. There's a tremendous amount of personal relationship with people, and it's just this ongoing involvement in the community. I think without banks, it's hard for a community to thrive. So that was an aspiration as a teenager, believe it or not. Most people were dreaming about being NBA All-Stars. I was too slow to dream about that. But that's what I ended up doing. I mean, right out of college, I moved to Nashville and started in a training program here, a management training program with the bank that, it's been like so many acquired multiple times since. But, that career is everything I wanted it to be. And everything I expected it to be, but there are also some dynamics in it I didn't expect. And, I think that kind of led me to do what I'm doing today. But, the thing I vividly remember when I got through all the academic part of risk management and how banks work and just kind of all that stuff, like stay out of trouble. And they put me out in the field. There was something about the small business owner that was just very resonant with me. I think it was, a certain level of definitely the energy field, the work ethic, the determination, but also a certain humility, that they weren't empire builders. They also saw themselves as part of a community and providing jobs for people. And they took that very seriously. And just the authenticity and diversity of it, these people finding a niche that you and I would never think about. And they're making great money at it. And they did it because they loved it, And so throughout the years, I kind of progressed through lending functions where I was directly managing relationships, and then probably 10 years into it, started getting into more executive management of the bank about how we, marshal resources at the bank to deploy to these people kind of on a broader basis. That job always had that small business owner in mind, but as the banking industry in the United States changed over these decades, it was just kind of a movement toward different things. First it was, how do we streamline underwriting so we're not spending so much money making a loan decision on smaller credit, and how do we use these tools? And then we got into online banking. The entire float system collapsed. It was all these things that we used to do for business owners to, help them maximize the float. It all evaporated. And so you're kind of responding to that, and also responding to new things, investment products, insurance products. You're keeping up with that. And ultimately, I was at a bank for about 9 years, a really excellent bank, and they were growing like crazy. But what we had started venturing into, because their mission was distinctive service and effective advice, and my mission was, how do you get effective advice to a mass market of small business owners? It's easy when you're a middle market company and you bring in the guy that uniquely knows how to build a trust, or it's like, all these things and it's like, well, how do you do that for small business owners? And we've got thousands of them. And it had to be scalable, in some way. And so we ended up launching a mastermind program on the E-Myth Revisited by Michael Gerber, which I'm sure it's a very famous book. And it was just amazing the way that worked and how hungry people were for the book. Amazing to me, people that have been in business for 20 years and hadn't seen the book. It's like it was all over the map, but the book stands on its own. It's just a phenomenal book. But it was more so this safe place that we built for business owners to be together without asking for leads, without, there's not a price, there's not a sale coming. It's like, we're going to keep all this stuff out, and we're going to honor each other's space and experience in this. And in that experience, I just had this big revelation to myself, Mitchell, where although I had enjoyed the work in banking and it was what I thought it would be, I just realized we were focusing on such a small piece of it. Capital is such a small piece of it for small business owners, and sitting in rooms with people and talking through, Gerber's book about just the energy around your business and having systems in your business and having all these different things really became present. And then the bank just got much, much bigger. I think it had increased 10 times in size since I started there. And I just started doing some soul searching. Is banking still it for me? And that's when I started Bizik. So I was just like, I don't think I have that zeal for capital and lending money like I used to. And I'm really, lit up by the idea of all these people that are self-sourcing information. There's no organization to the ideas that they're putting into their business, if they are at all. And just to try to create a system that is a wrapper that works. And that is reflective of just hearing over and over again that people wanted momentum in their business. That was like, and I heard it so many times that, I finally, just came to the point. I was just like, what do they mean? I kind of understand momentum. I wasn't a great science student in high school, but I understand the principle. And when they say that, what are they really talking about? And if they understood that this universal Newtonian or whatever idea of momentum, would it be applicable? And so, I did a lot of work on my own. I had a good friend who's a Caltech physicist. He spent a lot of time with me just talking about momentum and different principles. He was very skeptical about it, being in the physical world. Yeah, it was nice to do it, but I'll give a complete caveat to this whole thing. Like, he doesn't endorse my work. He informed it, but he doesn't endorse it necessarily. But I do, because when he was talking, I just thought of so many situations over 35 years of dealing with business owners, and I was just like,
I do believe that momentum and success are aligned. The more momentum you've got, success loves it. Now, without getting into the actual reasons behind that is probably a bit beyond me, but your story
I probably talked too much about how I got here, but
no, it's been really good, because it actually just reminded me of my start, which was also in banking. And I believe that like the training is really good in that corporate environment, and understanding how that system worked was a really good start for myself and my own business journey to take that knowledge all the way through, where a lot of people just have, I guess, no idea what's happening behind the scenes to actually make all that work. So, yeah, I actually have a good grounding in what you did. It's just probably I moved on a lot quicker than what you did from the banking world.
The pirate ship came much earlier in your career.
Yeah. I'll tell you why, though. I was young. I was early 21, and doing the same kind of jobs as around me. My colleagues were sort of mid-50s with really big leaning criteria. So I was probably the golden boy at that time. But I saw some of the older folk that were maybe closer to retirement with all this knowledge and all the rest. And the bank, no reason, would just cut some of these people. And I'm like, well, hold on. I may be, the one now that they're pouring all the money into, but one day I'm going to be like that. And it just, I didn't agree with that so much. Right. And so that led me to explore other opportunities outside of that corporate environment. Yes. And, everyone's just trying to get each other's job, and that I just didn't see the...
for banking, I mean, I'll say, again, I don't entirely know the banking system in New Zealand, but in America, when I started in banking in 1984, there were just under 15,000 banks here, and we're down to a little over 4,000 today. So the nature of the job became, consolidation and integration, and systems conversion, and and so the desire of that job to be out in the community and impacting people became, well, what's the gearing ratio? What can we afford to do for these people? And I don't say it's soulless, but it's not growth minded, kind of work where you're thinking about. What I like to think about is, how are we different? How can we be different in the market and bring that to the market and start growing organically? And it's just a big investor game. They have expectations and growth expectations, and I think it's turned out in America anyway, that it's easier to scale up by acquisition and figure out all the takeouts.
Hey, well, you'd be surprised to know that in New Zealand, we've got like a handful of banks. Yeah. That's it. We've got like 4 major ones and a few others. One, we're not the right size, but 2, our regulations are a whole different. So, yeah.
So anyway, I mean, and I think that, I don't know, it might be unfair of me, honestly, but, again, I go back to my beginnings in banking and my motivations for it. And I always felt like, this is a really important role that banks play, of being close to people, having great information, providing guidance, whether it's individually or for a business or whatever. And, toward the end, the realization of how much more was in the picture for a small business owner was the first part. And the second part was comparing it to the reality of the people and what the bank was stressing, and knowing that this is probably the greatest access point to small business owners in our country anyway, is through the banking. I mean, there's more massive businesses in banks than probably maybe cell phones or something. But and I was just like, well, where's the opportunity for a bank, and how could they be better at doing this kind of thing? And the mastermind was super helpful, but I've found in banking that whole idea is kind of out there for a lot of banks. Like they don't embrace that advisory position to where they'd ask somebody to go do that.
Oh, look, there is so much value in it, and that's why I have a job, you have a job,
right,
or a business around it. So do you. What does momentum, you've used this word momentum before, what does it actually mean in business, in the real world?
It means, what I've arrived at in my book, and I started Bizzix in 2019, and I realized about 2 or 3 years in that it would be really helpful to write the book about it. That's how I ended up writing the book, to document all this. And I feel like, at a very high level, it's not different than momentum and anything else. It's a very simple formula, mass times velocity. And, I think it's about moving purposefully toward a vision or a goal that you have. I think that some of the parts of it are underestimated and possibly misunderstood. So, when you start breaking the equation apart and you say, well, it's mass times velocity, And, you can get into all the things about velocity, which I'll talk about in a second, but the very first thing you have to solve underneath that equation is energy. I mean, it's not explicitly stated but energy has to be present to have velocity. And I think that, that's the first part. I think that many entrepreneurs and small business owners overlook is what is the entrepreneurial energy field for you? It should be where you are or where you see a segment today and what you're going to bring to it in this vision down the road. And there's a vibrational field in between there. I mean, you're thinking about it all the time. And you think about people like Sarah Blakely at Spanx. I mean, you think about so many, even Jeff Bezos at Amazon. It was just like there was something that consumed them. They were going to make the world better by their actions. And that energy field is necessary for any of the momentum to start. But, there's a lot of business owners that get really, I guess, obsessed about the idea of owning a business. And that's a very different thing than having an entrepreneurial vision and dream that creates a lot of energy for you to go do what needs to be done. Because you and I both know it's not an easy task. I mean, there's a lot of effort to it. And I've just found people. I think Gerber's right in his book. People leave jobs and start businesses because they hate the job they had. And I think they find out fairly quickly, like, hey, it wasn't that bad, or maybe it was just my boss. Like, this is really hard to grow and run a business. And so you have to tap back into that, energy field, first of all. And there's a lot more to it about culture and how energy is distributed. But, when you get to the velocity part, which is probably the part that's most familiar, I think, to a business owner, there's a lot of simplistic thinking, I think, among entrepreneurs about velocity, because it's very revenue and top line driven. And it's kind of like, I want to do more next year, than this year. It's 10% more. And I think for a velocity to hold up in business, velocity is a vector. So it's got to have a distance, a direction, and a speed by scientific definition. And when I start pushing business owners about exactly where are you going and how far and how fast, we kind of get from this amorphous top line of revenue into what did you build your business around? Who was the segment that you could most honor with your value proposition? And how much of that can you take? Because that's, whatever you built, I mean, your margins are built around the idea that you're going to serve that type of person or that type of company. And sometimes people get started, the overhead is there, they might have some debt, and all of a sudden it's like, what can I do to make money? And so that's kind of the top line orientation of, I'll do anything to make money. I got bills to pay. And I'm a lot more in sync with the idea of velocity. Is if you can, your vision, if you define this segment that you're going to make life tremendously better for, and you know how to reach them, and you can measure that. I picked up, whether it's your neighborhood roofing company, restaurants, or whatever. There's a way to measure it and just say, in 3 years, I want 25% of those businesses, of those households, to have eaten at my restaurant, or I'm going to put roofs on, 10% of the houses in Franklin, or whatever it is. It's a very different game than hoping for more. It's a lot more complicated than that, because you get the revenue part. You want to have high revenue, but you also want to have high customer satisfaction, and then you have to figure out your profitability.
The balancing.
What you end up in is you're in a Rubik's cube. Basically, you're trying to solve for multiple things at one time. And, that's kind of the velocity piece of it. So I can talk about mass too, but maybe want to stop and talk about.
Well, I'm just curious, because I'm hearing you speak. Like, what got you onto using physics as a business lens?
Yeah, that's a great question. I've been on a few podcasts, and people have said this is such a great metaphor. And I think what got me onto it, Mitchell, is I don't really consider it a metaphor. I think one of the early things that I talked about with Marcus is, what's the difference between a theory and a principle and a law. And when you get into laws like momentum, they should be universal. And unless something changes, unless we find a different gravitational field or something in the environment, we push the equation so far that it doesn't apply in some other, state of the universe. It should apply everywhere. And so, butt that up against mass times velocity. I'm a small business owner. There's 10,000 books out there on business management. What's the thing I can remember?
Mm,
What's the envelope I can pack my practices into? And so if this is interesting to people, and that's what I found is, momentum is interesting to business owners. Why not take a universal law and bust it up, apply it to, make sure it applies to business, and then just use it as your mindset. I mean, it's a tremendous mindset. Like, where's the energy in my business? And where am I going? Where am I going? I mean, if I, and that comes out of a banking conversation too. It's like, when you would try to get a loan approved for somebody and they couldn't tell you like exactly who their customer was. I mean, who's their ideal customer? How many are there? I mean, are there enough of those people that it even supports a pro forma? I mean, these are all questions that you'll be eventually asked. So it's a lot, I knew a guy one time and people used to say, he's a simple man, but he's not a simplistic man. It's a simple thing, but it's not a simplistic thing either. You've got to understand how energy works in human hearts, how energy gets distributed in an organizational system, just like in your home. I mean, there are places in your culture where the energy will stop. And I say this all the time. In banking, I saw more businesses run out of energy before they ever ran out of money.
right.
And you could walk in and just feel like,
through the business owner, you can see it, can't you?
right. Yeah. And so, start there. But that's the premise of it is like, give me an easy briefcase to carry these ideas around in. Mass times velocity, think about energy. And, none of them are just really easy things to do. Like, just that conversation about velocity, people need to spend a lot more time on the front end about who is this ideal customer and what's truly unique about what I'm doing. It's going to create an opportunity for me to take them away from somebody else. And so many times it's just like, well, I love whatever it is. I love whiskey. I'm going to create a whiskey that, the barrel has the traces of a wine from somewhere, and it's going to be this great mashup of whatever. And then it's like, well, who are you going to sell it to?
Yeah.
And you find out you haven't, you love your product, but there's not an easy way to the market. It's like the $400 hammer. Like, why wouldn't I go buy one for 15?
Coming back to that momentum thing, I know you'll be able to answer this because where do business owners confuse activity with progress? Because you can just be busy being busy, but that doesn't necessarily move the needle.
Well, that's it. I mean, I don't know if you've even looked at my book, but when I talk about energy in the very first chapter of the book, I point to the fact that the book is really about linear momentum. There's an angular momentum that's all about going in circles. But what I'm interested in is people. It's kind of the classic 45-degree angle on the growth chart.
Mm-hmm.
And so, what I liken it to is. There used to be a firework when I was a kid called the pinwheel, and you light that pinwheel on fire, and all it would do is spin around in a circle.
And burn your fence. Yeah,
high heat, Yeah. But then if you had a bottle rocket and you lit that on fire, I mean, it wasn't like you were aiming it at anything. I never tried to hurt anybody with the bottle rocket, but I mean, there's a specific linear trajectory to what they're doing. And that's what I say about business. And that's what happens so many times when people haven't figured this stuff out, especially this ideal client, unique value proposition part of it. You will spin around because, you're loving the life. Like you're an event manager, you're whatever. Like I'm living the life I dreamed of, but then it's kind of like, well, why am I not growing? Why do I not have any customers? Like you didn't take the time at the beginning for that very foundational thing of what are you equipping yourself for? And people like Sarah Blakely, people like Jeff Bezos, they're total outliers in the global economy. But when you think about Sarah's case, it was globally the idea that people should feel good about the way they look. That can be a real detriment to self-esteem. And like, okay, you've got, I don't know how many billion women all over the world that would love to feel like I'm a little, I feel a little fitter, or my clothes fit me a little bit better or whatever. So it's genius, when you find a pocket like that. And, on Bezos, it's like, books. That's where it started. He was just the most, and I think today, like 90% of all books are bought on Amazon or something like that. I mean, it's just like, it's an incredible percentage. they've just completely blown that up. There's going to be, I think Spanx has had some fast follower kind of things, but they spent so much time figuring that out before they ever got big.
Mm.
I mean, that,
Now, I believe you've said small but massive business. What does that mean?
That's the riddle. That's my Monty Python Holy Grail riddle of the Oracle. How can a business be small but massive? And in my conversations, in the physics world, mass doesn't really have anything to do with size. And so a small business owner should be encouraged that you can have a weight, a density in the market that is greater than much bigger competitors. If you're careful about what's at the nucleus of your business, I mean, that's where mass is in the physical world. That 98% of it is in the nucleus. And you ask yourself, what's in the nucleus of my business? First of all, it's you. What kind of experience do you have? How many failures have you had in life? Have you developed yourself as a leader? There's so many things that make us weighty people in the world that are all about personal investment and personal growth. But I always get to this whole thing about the value proposition too. It's like, when you've come up with something that's truly unique, that's the weight in the marketplace. And there's so many Me Too businesses that start, especially in services. It's like, plumbers, electricians. I mean, we need them all. The level of innovation about what they're uniquely suited to do is not there. So they're kind of in this sea of what's happening now, at least where I am. Like a lot of these businesses that used to be very profitable are almost tolling businesses now. Like there's no profit anymore in laying cable or things like that. You've got to be at a different level of a solution and have that work done as just kind of a tolling cost of the business.
So I think that kind of leads me to the next question. Sorry, is why do good businesses lose momentum then?
Well, there are two main things that I point to. I think the first one that we've already talked about is the energy level. And have you thought about this mission in your life, about the change you're going to create? There's a point in the book. There's a podcaster named Rich Roll that I listen to. I think he always has interesting kind of psychology type guests on there. I find him very interesting. But I was listening to him one time, and it really resonated with me. Is that when you're in a mode of service to others, your energy is almost inexhaustible. It's like parenthood. It's like the people that you're trying to serve. And so if there's not an authentic desire to serve people, that energy level is going to run out. Without energy, there is no momentum. I mean, it's like, you're going to stall out. And the other part is like when you're trying to move forward, there's this relationship between energy and speed that's a squared relationship. It's direct. But, if you want to go twice as fast, you need 4 times the energy. If you want to go 3 times as fast, you need 9 times the energy. That's in the formula. Don't ask me to draw it up on your screen here, but that is absolutely in the formula. And I think sometimes people underestimate how much energy is required to move at the rate that they think they want to move at. Mm-hmm. So that energy piece is there. But then the other part that is absolutely true physical phenomenon that we run into, every day in just our daily lives is the idea of net force. And for all of our game planning, for all of our business planning, and drawing our arrow toward our target, we don't operate in a vacuum. And I think that people are naive sometimes about the many other forces that are out there trying to push them off course, or that just naturally are like a headwind toward what they're doing. And whether that's just basic economic conditions. It could be the labor force. It could be local regulatory things, tax law changes.
Fuel prices.
And sometimes smaller businesses, they get very absorbed in the idea of what they're doing, and they lose that big picture of, okay, here's what's happening and here's how it affects my business. Just having coaching, having a coach just say, let's scan the landscape. What does it look like? I mean, of these 8 factors, which one could affect you this year? And we've gotten great at industry, delivering industry information. There are great services that deliver full, industry reports. I always encourage people, like, don't ever lose the big picture. And I think that is, people get blindsided. It's like, what we saw happen to Blockbuster happens routinely to small businesses. It's like you wake up, it's just like, wait a minute. Wait a minute, there's a robotic lawnmower. I mean, what
Okay,
you have to be paying attention all the time.
so how do
And that's
you
important.
identify the real bottleneck in businesses?
Well, I think the bottleneck in businesses is a lot about systems development. And to me, a bottleneck is symptomatic of somebody that doesn't really understand like flow states and just kind of how many people are coming in, how many people have to be served. What's our it's more of a scientific exercise of how can I serve this number of people without any kind of disruption. And that's a really great point that you're making, Mitchell, because a lot of businesses start and they don't worry about systems. It's a cottage industry. It's like they have a shingle hung out, and it's like, well, I'll make 4 of those next week, and then all of a sudden it's like, whoa, everybody liked it. I'm going to the regional craft fair now. I've got to have 150, and then you find out pretty quickly. I mean, you get a very quick lesson in throughput, material, acquiring materials. I mean, all of that, and that's a study in itself about scaling is what systems have I built that will allow me to be profitable and efficient as I scale up the line. That is not always a bad thing. If you feel like you've got a pretty good product or a service that you want to deliver, scalability today it's so much easier. If you're in a hard good industry and you need to produce, you might have to make an investment, in a machine, something like that. But I think about service industries and this world of AI, the world of, digital offerings that can allow you to take on like 20x clients with no disruption in your business. But it will choke your business because, I mean, basically what ends up happening is that's a friction point. And the last 2 chapters of my book are on friction and leverage. They're not tied directly into the equation, but they're very important to understand. Most of those chapters are about financial things like, in friction, liquidity, and margins are really where I hit. But when you think about a bottleneck or a logjam, what you're talking about is wasted energy. I mean, it is like, it's where the house is on fire. It's like, people are trying to cram stuff through, and there's so much heat and friction in it that it burns people up. I mean, that's what you really can't afford. It's like you've got to have smooth systems. First of all, to honor the customer and whatever the delivery is that you've promised to them, but internally, like, I mean, I've been in places in loan production where the loan platform was just horrible. And, so you're worried about the client wanting an answer. They want their loan docs. But when you're living inside of that as an employee, I mean, you talk about a waste of energy. Whatever energy you brought in with the dream and the vision, like when you put a bad process flow in a work environment, it's going to consume all the energy you hope is going out somewhere in the market. So systems are they're things that we have to engineer with our best thinking and have enough flexibility to change them as our needs change, and they have to complement each other. Systems theory is as important in business as in an automobile. Everything's got to sync up. I mean, you can't have like a high volume thing over here that feeds into a low volume process. And I don't know in New Zealand if the bear that show the bear gets aired over there, but it's a restaurant show.
Yeah, I love that show. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So you may remember this episode on process and how things have to sync up, because it was absolutely heartbreaking, intense for me to watch it. But at the same time, what a great lesson when the young chef understudy decided to go to online ordering without the bear's approval. And so they're in the kitchen with this, this very basic process of like family members are throwing sandwiches together, and the online orders are coming in. It's just spitting out paper.
Yes. Yeah.
That's my favorite analogy too. Is like, you can't create a high end like funnel, and back here you got mom and dad and a cousin filling the orders back here. It won't work.
Okay, so let's talk about a lot of people may have some really complex plans and go, yeah, this is great. Except ideally, like from my point of view, we just really want simple execution. Mm-hmm. Have you seen that happen like in the marketplace? Like, do you see that happening?
Things that are things that are complex, they are guided toward a very simple execution plan. That they're holding both of those together.
I just think they're too complex. Is just what I'm saying. People make things too complex.
Oh, I mean, absolutely. You know, especially in a family-owned business, and people are trying to patch it together to make it through, and then you wake up one day and it's just like, how did we build this? I mean, I saw it in banking many times. It's like, well, if we get this system and patch it onto there, and then all of a sudden it's like 5 years later, there's some consultant coming in going, what in the world is this? Like, do you know there's one system that'll do all of this?
Mm.
And you know, my favorite, I talk about this almost every time I talk about my book, but you know, speaking of making things complex and those that have the gift of simplicity, to me, digital music, I was very foolish in the mid 2000s. I'd had a Dell PC and I'd heard that digital music was coming out, and I was like, wow, you know, I'll get this product. It was the Dell DJ. I might have one here in my desk. Yeah, here it is, right here. This is my Dell DJ.
Oh, is that like an iPod, is it? Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah, so I bought 3 of these, and you talk about complicated. It was like, you know, call the 800 number. You know, it's like a little dial and everything. And my wife was a big Apple fan. She's like, we're not doing this anymore. And she's like, I'm going. I don't care what you paid. I'm going to get the iPod.
Yeah.
Brings the iPod home, and I'm just like completely blown away by the simplicity of it. And that, I mean, that's probably the Dell DJ. I mean, how many millions of an investment? I mean, that's how you know, even at a huge scale, we can be deluded into thinking that we're doing something very simple, but it's not.
Okay, so if we were talking to the average small business owner today, what do you think is one thing they need to stop overcomplicating?
You know, I think that I go back to the value proposition. I think you know the target that you have in mind that you're trying to help to be as simple about that as possible. And again, sometimes we think simplistically and we don't guide ourselves to being simple in things. And you know, for us, for instance, you know, in the U.S., I think the last data is like 35 million small businesses in the United States. So you know, you get into coaches like, how can I miss? You know, I mean, you know, there's such a need. How can I miss? And then, you know, you start thinking about, well, how do I find the ones that want what I'm doing? Like, this is not everybody's worried about momentum. You know, there are people that are just worried about making it. Like they need a financial coach. They need maybe foundational support. Maybe their only thing is they're worried about hiring people. I mean, whatever it is. So that clarity about, you know, what you're organizing is a system. I mean, there's something that you're organizing that is going to help people better than anybody else. And to have the simplicity, the clarity around who that person or who that company is, keep it as simple as possible. I mean, you know, just keep that part as simple as possible, and then be able to explain to them what you do as simply as possible. Because I think sometimes, you know, we get really excited. We think we have a value proposition, but there's not a simplicity to it that's compelling to the people that you're trying to serve. Mm-hmm. So I'm a big, you know, believer in continuous improvement. Any of the processes, you know, I think we study things and we say, well, how could we do that without, you know, this certain cost, or is there a way we can do it better? I mean, I think there are a lot of things like that go on and on, but I think the hard work to me is really at the front end. You know, when you're building a building, the foundation of it, that's where we need to be the most simple. Like, you know, it's like Cracker Barrel is a big company here. You know,
I've been there.
So I have a good friend. He married into the Cracker Barrel family. I'm very familiar with it, and he always used to joke about the motoring public. And that was that's how they defined it. We're interested in serving the motoring public.
Right.
There are restaurants that don't worry about the motoring public. That was their domain. They're going to serve people at you know, highway interchanges and that type of thing. And everything they did was built around that. So yeah, just having that, you know, things that seem like it's going to be so easy, like spend the time and go from simplistic to simple. Because it's a process. It doesn't happen overnight.
Hey, Chip, thank you so much for coming on today, merging the physics and the laws into actual business laws. Okay, so if this has resonated with someone today, where can they find you? And do you have a copy of your book that you can hold up for the camera?
Here's my book, The Bizzix Way, Powering Your Small Business to Maximum Momentum. You can find that on Amazon. It's in hardback, Kindle, and audio version. And you can find me at chiphiggins.com, or if you just want to, go a little bit deeper into some of the Bizzix, ideas, I have Bizzix.com is my main business website. And if you allow me to just make one quick plug that I'm very excited about, is I have an agent for the book called Bizzix On Demand, and you can find access to that on the Bizzix.com website. But what it provides business owners is a contextualized experience of my book. So you can go in, tell them what you're working, tell the agent what you're working on. It's got my book. It's got every article I've written. It's got some stuff that I've licensed. And it's really, I just want to say, like, it's amazing the kind of feedback you get with kind of a coach's lens of, like, what are you willing to do about it? Where do you want to start? And how can I resource you? And so there's a 7-day free trial on that. No card required. Just get in there and give it a whirl. And I'm excited about that accessibility, Mitchell. You and I both know, like, it's not easy to get small business owners to stop and take on a coaching session. I mean, and so it's 24/7 unlimited access, and it's a monthly subscription thing for right now it's just $14.99 a month. And, you can go in there anytime and just start a conversation. So please check that out too. I'm really, really excited about that.
Thank you so much, Chip. Look, if you're listening to this episode and it's got you thinking differently about your business, whether it's sales, systems, or strategy, that is the point. So as well as what Chip's got there, if you do want help identifying your biggest bottleneck, mapping out your next smart move, you can always book in a free breakthrough session with myself and the Coach Birds team as well. Thanks again, Chip. And to everyone listening, keep it simple, stay focused, and keep that momentum going. I love it. Cheers.
Thank you.
Let's talk small business. I appreciate you tuning in. If you got value, hit subscribe, like, or drop a comment. It spreads the word and might just help another legend get their breakthrough.